Did you notice how I was able to pronounce that correctly compared to all the other people where I come from? The reason is simple. I was born in 1951 in Rosenheim. So, ich bin ein Bayer, ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch, aber meine Mutter hat mich nach Amerika geschleppt in 1959. So, mein Deutsch ist schlecht, I'm going to continue in English. Have you ever wondered what might have happened if the Tesla Roadster project had never taken off or survived? Would the EV revolution have happened? And how many more years or decades would it have been for it to start? And who would have started it? Now, remember, electric vehicles have been around since the beginning of the last century, and in the 1990s, GM had a false start with what they called the EV1. But they got it all wrong. They decided there's no market for electric vehicles. All the other guys in the auto manufacturing business still thought that fossil fuel burning ICE vehicles were the holy grail of transportation, believing that battery powered vehicles were only for golf carts. So, the Roadster comes along. And the fact that the Tesla Roadster survived is nothing short of a miracle. During the formative years, funding was drying up, new investors were non-existent, and Elon Musk was splitting his remaining resources between SpaceX and Tesla during a cash burn that had bankruptcy written all over it. The Roadster project exceeded all cost projections, with an initial plan to electrify the Lotus Elise proving unfeasible. The early Roadsters were unfinished prototypes with an experimental drivetrain from a company called AC Propulsion System in San Dimas, California. But this vehicle was not ready for mass production. The plan to use the Elise chassis and body panels was eventually abandoned, with a new design requiring a resized frame, different body panels, and a replacement drivetrain, no longer using the AC propulsion drivetrain. At this point, the Roadster project had reached a point where it exceeded almost all cost projections, with a failed plan of just electrifying Lotus Elises. A new realization set in. All indications pointed to starting a new design from the ground up would have been a more cost-effective plan, but it was too late. Startup funding was drying up quickly. To compound the rapidly running out of funding problems, a new plan and design eventually was hatched. And since it had not yet matured, it was plagued with seemingly never-ending design improvements, recalls, and warranty rework costs. And then there was the issue of what battery to use. The AC Propulsion T0, of which only 3 were built, by the way, in 1997, woke the sports car world up to a fast 0 to 60 performance in around 4 seconds with an electric drivetrain, but it had only 80 miles of range. Not quite enough to replace your ICE cars able to go 200 to 400 miles on a tank of gas. T0 track times at Laguna Seca in California, which is a famous racetrack there, were beginning to embarrass the exotics of the day, keeping the EV intrigue alive since the auto community began to take notice that there's a new kid on the block. It was Martin Eberhard, who early on had the vision to replace the 12-volt Optima spiral wound AGM lead-acid batteries. Boy, there's a mouthful, isn't there? And in the T0 with lithium-ion cells, what he called at the time laptop batteries. Martin and Mark Tarpenning had just sold a company. It was an ebooks business, and they found that it made ebooks viable by using what they call laptop batteries. They were small, concise, the same things that you guys use in your power tools, the Milwaukee power tools, for example. So they put these into a T0, and now instead of going 80 miles of range, it had a much longer distance, up to 400 miles, and the batteries lasted longer than the traditional lead-acid type 12-volt batteries. The 12-volt lead-acid batteries that you have in your car as a starter typically last about 2 to 4 years. It depends on where you live. In Phoenix, we get maybe 2 years out of them because of the extreme heat. Many of the Tesla Roadster 18650 lithium-ion cells that were inserted in the Roadster eventually are still going strong 16 years later. We know this because we repair Teslas, and many of the Teslas that come to our shop still have the original legacy battery packs in them. J.D. Strobel, who has a Roadster with the first ESS battery pack. By the way, ESS is an acronym. Tesla loves acronyms. It stands for Extended Storage System. And he has one of the first, or the first battery actually, in one of his 3 Tesla Roadsters. And he told me a few years ago, he said, you know, these batteries were designed with a 10-year service life. And he was pleasantly surprised that they were getting, at that time, 14 years out of them. No one expected that. And today, as we speak, there are still Tesla Roadster battery packs that were created in 2008 that are still powering Roadsters without issue. All right, so these were the DC power plants that were then inserted into the Tesla Roadster. It was called a multi-cell lithium-ion battery pack. And by the way, in a Roadster, there are 6,831 vape cigarette cells. It's the same thing you put in your vaping devices. Now they were able to go 200 miles with this 1,000-pound battery pack in a Tesla Roadster. Now, what's interesting about this battery is it became the standard and the blueprint of the majority of electric vehicles that came after the Roadster, starting with Tesla's second act car, the Tesla Model S. They also used 18650 cylindrical cells. The modules were a bit different. Instead of sheets, which are vertical, they had horizontal modules which took up the entire floorboard of the car. And in a P85, you ended up with 16 of these modules for a total of 7,104 lithium-ion vape cigarette cells in the Tesla Model S. Now, this design proved to be timeless because guess what? Most of the EV manufacturers that came after Tesla Roadster used the same type of design. A multi-cell 18650 design inside modules or sheets. All right. How did Tesla survive? There are some humorous elements. History points out a brilliant gamble to prove to an existing car manufacturer, Daimler, from Germany, that one of their cars could successfully be electrified. Infused Tesla with enough working capital to launch the White Star project. The White Star project, by the way, was a Model S project. Dark Star was Roadster. They had these spacey sounding names back then for their designs and for their projects. Now, the Model S, as we know, is a far more practical family sedan for the masses, and an award-winning design, which is really what started the turnaround for Tesla. But Tesla needed an additional cash infusion because Elon was running out of money and he was running out of credibility to gather new investors into the venture. Well, apparently, Daimler didn't believe the hype when Musk presented the vehicle via PowerPoint, the electrified smart car, to a group of visiting engineers. But they had a Tesla Smart for Two, a smart car converted to a Tesla drivetrain, waiting for the engineers to try out for themselves. Tesla was then awarded the official contract to build the electric smart car. Daimler took a stake in Tesla and invested $50 million in the venture. And that was the breathing room that Tesla needed to continue to operate. This additional blood transfusion was vital, necessary, and the Tesla Roadster project survived along with the development of the Model S. Tesla finally released the Roadster in 2008 and actually became marginally profitable by 2009. They announced in early August 2009 that Roadster sales had resulted in overall corporate profitability for the month of July 2009, earning $1 million on revenue of $20 million. Now those figures sound laughable today when you consider the billions of dollars that Tesla is worth today. But it was a big deal back then. The Roadster continued to be released to owners with the release of the Model S in 2012, which had rave reviews, strong demand, and Tesla began to flourish. Now, as of today, there are 2412 Roadsters that were built, and just under 2,000 survive, according to a Roadster registry that we started 3 years ago. On our website, we encourage Roadster owners to register their Roadster, their VIN number, where they're located, and the fundamental reason for that was, and still is, Tesla didn't know how many Roadsters were out in the wild still, and our concern was, will they continue to support the car if they think there aren't enough owners out there? So today, if you go to grubermotors.com, there's a little icon that says Roadster Census, and it's kind of cool because if you want to see how many lightning green Roadsters there are versus Arctic white, you put that in the search field and it will tell you how many, where they are, and what the condition is. All right, service. There are a small number of fine independent service organizations like ours. In Phoenix, Arizona, we have more Tesla Roadsters than anywhere else on the planet. There are about 60 at any given point in time, and they're under various states of service. There we go. We had one of the local guys, he had one of these tiny drones, the kind that flew through Giga Berlin, remember? It was a monumental drone shot. We had him come in and do the same thing. They're actually flying through cars here at certain points. We had the batteries dropped out of Roadsters, and the drone actually flew up inside and down through the Roadster. All right, so a number of fine independent service organizations around the globe that continue to provide service for the Tesla Roadster, along with select Tesla service centers. And the reason I say it that way is due to Tesla service center staff attrition, people leaving. There is a shortage of Roadster technicians currently within Tesla, and not all of the service centers around the world will accept a Tesla Roadster. We had one customer in the Southeast who was annoyed because he was 15 miles away from a Tesla service center. He tried to take his Roadster there and they said, you've got to drive 200 miles north to North Carolina in order to get your Roadster serviced. But believe me, it makes sense, because why would you take your Roadster to a shop, to a service center that no longer has the Roadster staff to be able to service your car? So the number of Roadster service centers that are able to serve Roadsters have been reduced. And if you're interested, we provide a list on a Facebook site called Tesla Roadster Owners Group, where you can actually see the service centers that are still doing service work on your Roadster. But what's good about this is, along with the service center scaling back, independent maintenance began to increase. Here in Europe, you have a number of them. You've got Mars Orbiter, you have GS in Switzerland, you've got Marco No up north, you've got Chris Rosa, you've got Ed McNeilson, and hopefully there are more beginning to come up to speed. These are the service organizations that are offsetting the reduction in Tesla service center locations. Tesla is also recognizing the value that these independents have in servicing Roadsters. So we're seeing a lot more cooperation from Tesla, including Elon earlier this year open sourcing all of the Roadster documentation. Remember that? That was a watershed moment. They no longer consider independents competition, but they consider them partners. Organizations that are going to provide service for their customers. So they're acting more like service partners these days in solving Roadster owner problems. Service tools are also rapidly evolving. We have been training artificial intelligence, a large language module, by feeding our decade of Roadster service cause and effect history into this LLM, along with everything that Elon released. And we created a Roadster GPT tool, just like GPT-4, 4.0, whatever else. But this is specific to Roadster. And our mechanics, technicians, and engineers use this on a daily basis to reduce labor times for our customers because the diagnosis is much faster. We've noticed that AI is smarter than we are. Have you guys noticed that too? So, the other thing that the independents are able to do is take the design and innovate to the next levels. One of the things that we're working on now is converting the Tesla Roadster to a NACS system, the North American Charging Standard in the United States, and the CS2 here locally in Europe, with the support of Tesla, which is very important. So eventually, that proprietary charge plug that you have on your Tesla is no longer going to be necessary. You know, the CAN Junior, CAN Senior in the United States that you have to have in order to charge from J1772 or from the new NACS type standard will no longer be necessary. Now, we're not doing the second step, which is supercharging the Roadster, because the Roadster was not designed to charge from DC, yet anyway. It can only charge from AC. But the future may be that we also now allow Roadsters to go to superchargers, the first generation Roadsters. All right. The other thing that we've done is we added a dedicated Tesla Roadster exotic car storage facility in North Phoenix, not too far from our shop, about 2 buildings away. And it's located by an airport in North Phoenix. Our thinking is that people that see the Roadster, first generation Roadster, as collectible, may be interested in storing their car with an organization that understands how to take care of the car. I can't tell you how many cars have come to our shop because an exotic car storage facility didn't know how to charge the car and bricked it. Here in Munich, for example, Raphael de Mestre, who went around the world, took his car, VIN 581 I think, to the Munich Museum. It was extraordinarily successful. Within 1 year that it was there, it had hundreds of thousands of visitors, and they ended up asking for a 6-month extension. The second crew at this Munich Museum didn't know how to charge the Roadster and killed it, bricked it. The car finally came to us, by the way, all the way to Phoenix, Arizona, so that Raphael could continue his travels around the world, and a new battery pack got installed in his Roadster. So our goal is to provide a storage facility that understands the cars, that understands the charging protocols, and we're also going to put OVMS systems in every car. That is an open vehicle management system, which gives telemetry and information sent from the car to either your cell phones or to our control center, so that our people will continuously see on flat screens what each car is feeling, what it's doing, how much state of charge it has, and if there are any problems. All right, so the service future for Roadsters. The Roadster support evolution, expanding now to independence, will mirror what happens to later model Teslas like yours. I think the majority of you have the later sexy versions. I see one person in the audience that has a Roadster outside. So we don't have a strong Roadster representation here. But we think that your service options will continue to expand as well. As your cars go out of warranty and you're no longer able to get free service at the Tesla service centers, you may choose to take that to an independent, which is not going to be as expensive as a Tesla service option. And oftentimes, if these independents specialize like we do in Roadsters, there's an additional level of expertise that's available because, as you know, anything that you do in large quantity, you get very good at. The other reason that we think that independents are vital in the equation, Tesla's production goals continue to increase rapidly. We're up to, what, 3 million cars now that have been produced, right? We don't think the service delivery system is going to be able to keep up with the production goals. Remember, as they're cranking out cars, they're going to have to build new service centers to meet that demand. It's not possible based on the production goals and the amount of manufacturing space they have under construction. You can do the math, figure out how many service centers it takes for a certain amount of production, and you'll see that the trend is in the wrong direction. So Tesla is going to have to eventually license and certify independent operations, which means now a whole new level of support. They're going to provide us tools, documentation, support. All right. Tesla is also not the only EV producer that's facing this problem. The new startups, the Lucids and the Apteras and the Rivians, as their production increases exponentially, they're focused on pushing out cars to make the shareholders happy. They don't want the expense of creating new service centers and the long lead time required to get people competent on how to repair the cars. We think that this faction, the new EV producers, are also going to come looking for independence. So for those of you out there that are in the EV repair space, the future is very bright for you. Continue to learn how to fix the cars, continue to practice, continue to become good at that process. And eventually those manufacturers are going to come calling on you. All right, we get asked this often. The first generation Tesla Roadster, will support continue for the Roadster? Well, at this point, Tesla is the only source of replacement for the ESS main battery system, taking it from 53 kWh to 80 kWh for longer range. But remember, a lot of the legacy packs are still functioning. It will end though. That honeymoon is over at some point in the future because lithium-ion cells do not last forever. We just don't know how long they're going to last yet. The first indication how they will fail is what we saw in the 2016 packs, which was a Korean cell that apparently was inferior and is beginning to fail within 8 years of installation. The first generation packs, replacement packs that Tesla made, started around 2015. And for a couple of years, they were putting these in cars and began to see a rapid decline in range. What we're seeing now in those packs is the loss of power. We have a customer that lives in the Malibu Hills in California. He can't drive his Roadster home anymore. He can't make it up the hill. And when you're driving one of these impedance-affected packs, loss of power packs, they're driving like ice cars. You try to get on a freeway, and suddenly you think you're driving in your wife's Chevy. So that's the first indication we have of how the legacy packs are going to fail. It will be a loss of power. And for those of you that have 2.0 Roadsters, you have the little kW meter. If it's beginning to look like less than 200 kW when you punch the accelerator, you're starting to lose power. Some of them are so bad they only go to 100 kW, for example, and then less than that. And it's very anemic. You punch the car, you get a lag, and you slowly begin to go. One customer in San Diego, it won't go over 40 miles an hour now. So it's a precursor to what we feel the legacy packs and the original packs are going to look like when they go end of life, and it's inevitable. All right, the cost for something like this. Until October 2nd of 2023, you could buy a replacement pack for a Tesla Roadster for $29,000 plus tax. It was roughly around $34,000, $35,000 in the US. We knew that this price was below their cost because these are hand-built. You have literally 14,000 connections on each cell that has to be hand welded with an ultrasonic welder. And it's all done by hand. Remember, the production on these Roadster packs is so small, they can't cost justify robotics. That's the real way to do it, is to have robots doing this. No one's going to do that for the Tesla Roadster. There aren't enough of them being built to justify the millions in expense to go robotics. So what Tesla finally did in October of last year, they brought the cost in line with their costs. It's now $40,000 plus tax to get your battery pack replaced in the US, about $45,000. Here in Europe, you're looking at $10,000 in shipping and customs fees, so you can add $10,000 to that number. But the good news is we're still able to get the cars replaced, the batteries replaced. Parts. What is Tesla doing about parts? Tesla started a Roadster buyback program in a trade-in version, which is designed to make these critical small run parts that are no longer in production available to owners. They've spent millions buying back Roadsters at the service centers so that you guys can have parts that have Roadsters. Roadster collectible status. This is another interesting topic. The Roadsters are on the early stages of moving into collectible status, and rightfully so. The reason we feel that's the case is it was the car that ignited the EV revolution. Think about it. What other car had anything to do with starting an EV revolution? It was the Roadster that proved that these cars are fun, that they are sustainable and successful. 2, compared to all other Teslas, it's the only two-seater convertible sports car version vehicle. Now, I know a lot of you here in Europe, and I love what you've done with some of your Model 3s and Ys. You've tricked them out, you've wrapped them, you've made them look sporty. But I'm telling you, I drive Roadsters every day. There's nothing like a two-seater Roadster with the top down. So it has a number of design elements like this, including it's supported by an almost fanatically passionate owner base, many of whom were early adopters willing to gamble on a near-bankrupt company. Right now, there is a Roadster glut, meaning there are too many for sale. And the market for Roadsters right now is plentiful. It's the simple law of supply and demand. If you're thinking about buying a Roadster, original Roadster for collector value, there's no better time than right now. Remember the old adage, buy low, sell high? Well, you can buy low right now, and I don't think it will last forever. It doesn't mean that the car is any less collectible. It just means that with so many on hand, the prices are depressed right now. For those of you interested, on the Gruber Motors website, we have a free Roadster matchmaking service, and there are about 50 of them listed for sale out there. And you can see what kind of prices you're getting, where they're located. Many of them are in Europe, UK, Germany, Austria. All right, people usually ask, do I still have time? 5 minutes, okay. The second generation Roadster, we get asked this all the time. Will there ever be a second generation Roadster? Well, our feeling about that is yes. Tesla always comes through, although delayed at times. The more time that goes by, however, the more pressure is placed on the performance specs as other EV producers attempt to beat the specs. Remember when we heard that it was under 2 seconds, we thought, oh my God, this is the car to have. And then Tesla beat that with a Plaid. You know, they beat their own car basically. Now we've got a second generation Roadster that is going to have an option with SpaceX rocket launchers for a 1.1 second 0 to 60. For most of us, that's going to be blackout speeds. You're going to be woozy by the time you hit the freeway and you're doing 60 miles an hour after 1 second, blast. In conclusion, the future for electric vehicles is secure, thanks to the tiny startup that Tesla once was. And the vision of Martin Eberhard, Mark Tarpenning, combined with a level of perseverance that only Elon Musk could have brought to the project to give it wings, including the financial backing right to the brink of personal bankruptcy. Along with an early and unusually gifted Tesla team, we work with a lot of them, by the way. Most of them are retiring now. But this was a team of people that was unique. You have many customers or vendors as well. But the Tesla team was passionate about the Roadster project and what it could become. They believed in the product. So Tesla survived, became the leading auto manufacturer in this century, continuing the spirit of innovation from full self-driving, global charging network, to incorporating AI into cars and beyond with robotaxis, all which is rapidly changing transportation. The future is bright. And all of you, communities like this that support the cause of getting fossil fuel burners off the roads and converting to EVs for a cleaner planet, deserve much credit because you will be applauded in the future. Our company is proud to be part of this movement, and thank you for allowing me to speak here in Flachau, Austria.